One day, Troy Karnes drank too much and he missed his wife's birthday dinner that he had planned. To show her that he could change, he put $10,000 into their joint bank account and told her that he wanted to use it on a dream vacation 1 year later. If he messed up, she could take it. Well, Troy didn't last a month. She kicked him out of the house that afternoon, and when he woke up in a hotel the next day, he watched the sunrise and had no idea where he had slept the night before, where he would be a week from then, and which company he might be working for. He worked in the alcohol business his entire career before that. This was a pretty hopeless moment.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Troy Karnes is a father, a husband, a recovering alcoholic, and a salesman. He is a cancer survivor, a business consultant, and a writer. And from what I read in his intro, I think we are going to enjoy an incredibly challenging and inspiring story. Thank you so much, Troy, for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Oh, Carol, I appreciate being here. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with your story. Take it away.
Yeah, like as you know, in the intro, like you said, I was in the alcohol business for a while, and overdid it. Ended up checking myself into rehab after just finally coming to the realization that this was an issue that I could not overcome on my own, and that I needed help. And that was that realization just went against so many things that I had thought before. Mainly, I kind of grew up feeling like asking for help was a sign of weakness.
Right. How long did it take you to come to that realization? Sorry, just
No, don't feel sorry. No, it's a great question. Years and years. I'm not even sure that I could remember the first time that I thought like maybe I have a problem here with my drinking. But like I said, years.
Really?
But this kind of idea of not wanting to ask for help, goes back further than that. I generally had this sort of, maybe blue collar or like old school kind of masculine thinking that, I was strong enough to handle anything that happened in my life without bothering anybody else. And there's a couple things that are wrapped up there. One, like I said, is that kind of like, I would now think of it as kind of faux masculine belief that I was just strong enough to do everything on my own. But secondly, that I didn't want to bother anybody, that I didn't want to put anybody out and stuff like that. And then when those two things combine, it was a pretty powerful thing that kept me away from looking for help at all. But as I, like when I couldn't last a month after making like a pretty big, financial commitment to my wife to say like, I'm going to figure this thing out. I mean, that to me was just like, it could not become more clear that I was not going to be able to do this, because it wasn't just the money. It was also that, I was like, oh, we'll take us on a trip that we've been talking about for a long time. Like, oh, let's go
Right.
to Iceland and, do the hot springs and the volcanoes and all that stuff. Like, that is a vacation that we've been talking about for years. And the incentive of that wasn't even enough. And
Wow.
yeah, you said hopeless. And yeah, I just felt so hopeless. Like, if I was at the end of, I couldn't figure it out. And there hadn't been too many things to that point that I couldn't have figured out on my own. And it was so clear. It was so clear then that I couldn't. It was wild. Yeah, I made a few phone calls. I just typed into Google like rehab, and
Really?
yeah, and like saw what was around me. And I had a pretty good conversation the evening that I got kicked out of the house with my uncle, who fought his own battles with addiction. And he said, you just got to go get help. And I at that point I didn't know what else to do, so I was going to do whatever anybody told me to do. So yeah, so I Googled rehab facilities, and then in the morning he texted me and said, "Oh, I've also heard pretty good things about this one." And I called that one, which was, closer to my house. The first few that I looked at were, I'm in Colorado, and one was in Nevada, and one was in Texas. So at that point I kind of thought I would be out of state for a month or so. But the one that he sent to me was, away from my home, but in Colorado still. And that felt better. And that's where I ended up going.
Are there usually long waiting periods to get in?
Usually I don't know. It happened pretty quickly for me. Once I narrowed in the place where I was going to go, they had a bed for me within 2 days.
Wow,
So
that's awesome.
yeah, so it moved pretty fast then. And yeah, and so, I had kind of two days to put my life together, at least to the point where I could, come up with a plan to, my expectation was I would be gone and out of the house for a month.
How did your wife support you at this point?
She did. I mean, she was amazing, and I'm so grateful for her compassion in that moment. And I mean, she was justifiably angry
Mm,
and sad and disappointed, just like a mix
right.
of emotions. But she said, "Yeah, man, go get yourself right." And so one of the sweetest moments, I think, when I get old, I'm sure I will look back on this moment as being incredibly sweet. But the rehab facility suggested to bring some books to read, but they didn't suggest specific titles. So we just went to the bookstore and we ended up getting a couple copies of the same books so she could read
Oh,
the same thing I was reading.
interesting.
And yeah, and it was a way, I think, for us to stay a bit connected, even if we were going to be apart for a little while. And it seemed more practical in the moment, and now I find it to just be more sweet and more of a sign of how connected we are. And yeah, I mean, I wouldn't there's lots of reasons I wouldn't be around without her support, but this was certainly one of them.
Wow. And what emotions were you going through? Did you feel like a loser? Did you feel a failure? Were you encouraged, discouraged? What were you going through those stages when you made the decision and then finally was there?
Yeah, I did feel like a loser. I felt like a loser. I felt stupid because there was a part of me that was like I knew what the right thing to do was, like it was really kind of on the face of it, I thought very simple, right? Like drink
Right.
2 beers, not 12 beers, but so simple, right? Easy math, but I couldn't. And and so I did. I felt like a loser. I felt stupid. I felt incredibly scared. Um,
Oh,
I had wrapped my whole life and my whole identity around drinking. It's what I did for
that's
my
right.
career.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to be, this is kind of a funny story. So, um, my mom never drank, but she would always want to just have wine in the house for guests who came over. And I got into the wine industry when I lived in Washington, D.C., and she was still in Colorado. And she would call me from the wine shop and like read labels of wine to me, and I would help her pick them out. And I liked being that guy. I liked being the guy who knew a lot about wine and whiskey. And, it can be pretty nerdy. And there's a lot of just interesting facts or things to know. Like you'll never learn everything about wine or alcohol. And I
Right.
and I
Right.
liked being the guy who people would call when they had a question about alcohol. Like so it was deeply ingrained in my identity. And then I thought to myself, like, who would I even be if I didn't drink? And that's scary.
No
Losing
kidding. No
identity.
kidding.
Yeah, losing identity is a pretty scary thing. And it's a thing that I think keeps people from taking the step to, face their bad relationships or their destructive relationships with alcohol because they're worried that they will lose friends, that they won't be as fun, that there's
Oh,
a lot of fear and identity that gets wrapped up in that.
wow.
And yeah, so it felt and just so uncertain then of what I would do for a living and everything. And listen, like you don't I find that people who go to rehab and who drink a lot, like have friends who drink a lot. There's lots of research that like your friends are incredibly impactful when it comes to your habits. And so I had all those worries too. Like, who would I hang out with? Who would still be friends with me? All
Right.
of that stuff is just so up in the air that it was really scary.
Let's go back a little bit just because of what you brought up about emotions. Tell us about the day that your wife actually kicked you out. Like, what were you
Mhm.
going through that day in
Yeah.
particular?
So the story of that day begins the night before. And I had a work event. My company had teamed up with a local restaurant, and so we had a big event and went out to the dinner and just drank too much. I got really drunk and woke up really hungover. And as a way to kind of get through the day, then I thought, oh my gosh, I just need some hair of the dog, right? Like yeah, I just need a little more alcohol and then I'll feel fine. This was 2021, so my wife and I both working from home. Maybe it was like the midday. Maybe it was like 11, maybe it was like around lunchtime. She's like, "Oh, we should go for a walk. Take the dogs and everything else we did." And she confronted me. She's like, "I think you're drunk. I think you've been drinking." And I lied to her. I said, "No,
Mm,
I'm just feeling it from last night, but no, I'm fine." And she knew better, but I
right.
didn't know she knew better, right? Um, and then that afternoon, I passed out in a Zoom meeting.
Oh, no.
I did. I
Oh
did.
my goodness.
And she smacked me on the shoulder, woke me up, on top of many expletives, said, there, I packed your bag, I booked you a hotel room, and the Uber is on its way,
Wow.
but you cannot be here. And I didn't fight with her. Like I knew I'd
Right.
messed up. And the car showed up. I threw the suitcase in the back and jumped in, and he took me to the hotel. I didn't know when I'd be back.
Were you more angry or what at this point?
No, I would say more defeated.
Okay.
This was just a month after I made a pretty big promise that I
Oh,
was
that's right. That's
not going
right.
to do this. So like and again, not the first time we had gone through something like this, or I had done something like this. Um and it kind of came to a head the month before, and I was like, okay, like I really this time like really really got to get it together. And then yeah, so just felt defeated because I couldn't even go a month. It was, yeah, pretty embarrassing at the time.
Did you have kids at that point?
Yeah, yeah.
And were they aware of what was going on? Were they too young or do they remember now?
I think they were too young. Um, if there is a silver lining to that. Yeah,
Right.
I think they were too young. So but they were that day, they were with my mom. My mom had babysat because we had the work event the night before. So I left before they got home.
Right. Now, I know that there are a lot of people that struggle with this. I know some personally. I think we all know people
Yeah.
who are struggling with this. So, how do you stay clean? What advice can you give to those who are struggling right now?
Mm.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another: gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
So the advice so here you're 100% right. There are like 48 million Americans will struggle with substance abuse. Not many will ask for help. And the ones that do, I mean, it's pretty hard. If you wrap all addictions together, 85% of people who, try to get clean will relapse in their first year. The stats are a little bit better if it's just alcohol, which was my problem, but still 2/3 to 3/4 of people will not make it their first year without a relapse. It's an incredibly hard thing to get over.
Yes.
And when I went into rehab, I chuckle because I kind of approached it like a business person would. I asked one of my therapists, like, how do so many people mess this up? And my plan was just to take her list of why people failed and just don't do those things. And I figured I'd be in pretty good shape. She said, well, and this is something that didn't change my outlook on life entirely. This one conversation, it's pretty crazy. But she said, people do not make good decisions when they're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired.
Right.
Halt. And it terrified me because those are not things I could just avoid or not do, because everybody is going to get those things every single day because we're humans. I also didn't like the idea of, because the advice was, if you feel like you want to drink, think to yourself, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And if you are one of those things, go take care of that instead of going for a drink. And it seemed like that would take a lot of willpower. And
Mm.
Carol, I did not end up in rehab because I have really good willpower, right? I liked the simplicity of halt, and it did feel powerful. And I just needed to find a way to incorporate it into my life. And so I came up with ways where I could be proactive about those things instead of reactive. I thought if I could get ahead of these, like if I could eat, nutritious and satisfying foods on a
Right.
schedule that meant that I wasn't going to get super hungry and then angry, that would be good. If I could process my emotions in real time instead of stuffing them, which is what I had done to that point, I could get ahead of them. If I could reach out to people on a regular basis and stay connected with them and kind of really pay attention to my network instead of isolating. And if I could, pay attention to my sleep and to exercise and, really kind of take care of my energy, I would give myself a shot at staying sober. And so that's what I did. I put together, kind of a self-care routine around this idea of halt. I do a check-in with myself every morning. I turned it into a Google form, and I track how I slept and what I ate the day before and whether I achieved my goal that day or not. And I started weighing myself every day and then doing a journal prompt. And outside of the journal prompt, it takes 90 seconds and it all feeds into a spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet then puts these things on a graph. And that's super important because it
Oh
showed
my
me.
goodness. Yes.
Yeah, it showed me how, and everybody's like a little bit different, but for me, I can tell like if I start eating really poorly, it means that something is going on emotionally. And now I can see it on a graph, which means that I can get ahead of it, or I can close
Mhm.
the amount of time between something that's bothering me and how long it takes me to figure it out and then deal with it in a more proactive or healthy way. And for some people, like I said, for me, it's eating and then sleeping, and then I stop achieving my daily goals. I start blowing off, things that I want to get done that day. For other people, it might be different, right? Like maybe
Right.
their sleep goes first and then it's their mood and then but the idea is when you put all these things on a line graph, you can see where they dip together and where they peak
Ah,
together and those kinds of things. So it's been incredibly powerful. The other component is a journal prompt every day. And that is also incredibly important because there's some really cool research from James Pennebaker. He's at the University of Texas, but his point is, and this research goes back to the 80s. It's super old and been replicated thousands of times, but there's magic that happens when you transform your thoughts into language
ah,
because you have to understand them
right.
better if you're going to turn it into language. And it also, there's another researcher, his name is Ethan Kross, and he wrote a book called Chatter, and it's about the voice in your head. And he opens the book with a great stat, which is we can generate 4,000 words per minute in our minds. I'll put that into context for everybody listening to the podcast here. You would have to listen to this podcast at like 29.6 speed to get to 4,000 words a minute. And
Mm,
if you put this on 4 speed, I promise you won't understand any of it.
right. Right.
So the idea of trying to, make sense of 4,000 words a minute in your mind, it's just impossible.
Ah,
But if you slow down, right, you speak at maybe 125 words a minute, vastly slower, right? And then if
mhm.
you're typing, if you're a really fast typer, maybe you type 60 words a minute. Most people are probably like 40 words a minute. So 3 times slower than you speak. And then if you write in your journal by hand, now you're 13 words a minute. It slows your mind down to the point where you can kind of understand what's happening there. And that's why writing is incredibly powerful.
Boy, that's good. That's excellent. And I like the way you laid that out. That's, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. That's the basics of the routine, right? Like
Right.
it's a morning check-in where you kind of see how you're doing and then write on a journal prompt.
And does this help or did it help you in staying clean And the other part of that question is, how do people stay clean? Like, I know that, again, I've known so many people, and I think we all have, who, make the commitment and they do the due diligence, and they fail. And some go back to drinking, and some will pick themselves up. But I know that you are very familiar with that scenario. So just
Yeah.
address that. How does somebody, or possibly how did you stay clean?
Well, I'll say that sobriety is a team sport,
Okay.
and trying to do it alone, I mean, I haven't seen it work. I'm sure maybe there are some people who are just able to do it on their own, but I have not met that person
Uh,
yet. It required for me and the other people who have so far been successful in it. I mean, it does take connecting with other people and supporting them, and part of that then is being a part of something bigger than yourself. My path took me to rehab people, and connection is incredibly important, and that to me is the biggest thing. It's connecting with other people, because it's, man, I can't even imagine trying to do it alone. Well, I guess I did. I tried to do it alone, and I failed over and over and over again until I got help and connected with other people doing it, and made it something that I talk to my friends about who aren't getting sober or weren't getting sober. Just to, I wanted some social accountability there too, but I just wanted to be able to make it public so that I could connect with people. Because again, I couldn't do it alone. That I had proven to myself time and time again.
I have written here that you now are raising money for cancer research. You are an author, which we're going to talk about your book. You have a coaching business, and you teach others how to overcome challenge. Is this what you started to do during the initial recovery time, or tell us about what's happened in your life since?
Yeah, well, I will. I'm going to answer this question by going back a little bit to your question is like, has this helped me stay clean? And the answer to that question is yes, and it's even more powerful than I expected it to be when I kind of put it together. Because in the last week, in the week I was supposed to graduate from rehab, I went to the doctor because I thought I hurt my shoulder. And so I went to the orthopedic doctor. He gave me an x-ray. He said, "Oh, I need an MRI." I said, "Okay," got an MRI. This all happened in one day. And he called me back 5:30 that night and said, "I am not the doctor for you. You need the guy who deals with rare orthopedic tumors."
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And I said, "Yeah, send me to that guy." So he did another MRI, meeting with him, a biopsy, and then I got diagnosed with a big, scary, dangerous, rare cancer. Man, talk about a relapse scenario. Like
Yes, yes.
that is something that I think would force many, like if I relapsed after getting that diagnosis, I don't think many people would have said like, "Shame on you." I bet they would have said, "Oh, I bet." Like that's
Okay.
tough,
Right.
right? There's a kind of a saying, or kind of lore about rehab, which is that you will get tested on your way out. And a lot of times that means new romantic relationships or new jobs, or, friends, or kinds of things like that. And mine ended up being cancer. So I had a bone cancer, incredibly rare, like 1,200 people a year get this, like one half of a percent of cancer diagnosis, or the kind that I got. It required 2 surgeries. They removed my whole shoulder blade out of my right side. And then I had a second surgery to put they made a titanium implant for me. So I have a new shoulder joint, a new shoulder blade, and all of that. And the self-care routine that I put into place kept me sane and sober through the diagnosis and those 2 surgeries, and then a
Oh
year
my
of physical
goodness.
therapy afterwards. And yeah, I mean, it's incredibly powerful. And
Tenacity is your middle name.
could be, I suppose. I wouldn't mind that. You asked about the book. And so people kind of asked me all the time after going through all that, like, man, how did you do it? And I ended up, there were a lot of things that happened afterwards that ended up being pretty good, or like good results, right? Like, I used to be a pretty big guy. I lost 50 pounds. That was part of this process that was really good. I went from, I quit my 9 to 5 and started consulting, and I replaced my salary in like 6 months. And now I'm the guy who drives the kids to and from school. So I'm a more present father, better husband,
Uh,
much healthier. Like, I had super high blood pressure before, and now it's like actually kind of in the low range. And just like kind of all these things. And people would ask
right.
me, like how I did it. And I would tell them about Halt and how I implement it. And they said, "Oh my God, that's amazing. Like, you should write about that." And, I always wanted to be a writer. I just didn't know how when I was in college. And so I kind of said, okay, well, if people are, asking me about this, maybe I should write a book. And so, the book is called No Silver Bullets. And the point is that, I spent my life solving problems. That was part of one of my identities. It was like, man, if you have a problem, I'll solve my problems, I'll solve your problems. I just wanted to be a problem solver. What I realized, like all of these things, one after another, like, and just like Halt, like there are no, so those are, I even hesitate to call them problems, but they are problems without solutions. You will never solve your hunger. You will have to eat every single day. You will never
Mm,
solve your emotions. You will feel emotions every single day.
mm,
Same with relationships. Relationships take constant work, effort, and maintenance. Um, and your energy, like, we sleep every single day. We move every single day. Like, there's no solution for this. And when I realized that and started thinking about nurturing these aspects of my life instead of just solving problems all the time, I got much better results. And so the book kind of has three sections to it. A third of it is memoir. There are 4 stories from my life that I tell. A third of it's research, and it's research on, how nutrition affects our mood, about kind of emotions, and about resentment and rumination, which I think are 2 of the most harmful feelings that we can have. Research about relationships, and then about energy. And then a third of it is the tactics that I use to kind of take care of these things in my everyday life. So it's stories and science and systems to nurture the most important foundations of our lives so that we can make better decisions, have better relationships, and kind of just a more satisfying life altogether.
that's really very well stated and kind of wraps it up into a nutshell. I appreciate that. Is
Yeah.
there anything else that you would like to share with the audience um, in that vein, in wrapping up what you have shared today?
No, I think just the main nugget there, despite what people may hear from a lot of like self-help or personal development, like, I don't think your life is broken, and
Mm,
your life doesn't need to be fixed. In fact, I think that it's worthy of being nurtured. And that is the approach that I have found delivers the best benefits.
wow, very well stated. Thank you. Thank you, Troy. You have been an encouragement. You certainly have enlightened us. And I know you have given us, well, you've challenged us as well. And the way that I feel challenged is looking at where you have been, overcoming what you have done. There's hope for all of us. Like, we don't have to be stagnant. And I really appreciated what you shared as far as when you made that decision, went into rehab, and then how you stuck it out. And that's so encouraging about not just being, regarding alcohol, but just regarding things in life, and to putting your best foot forward, helping others. I mean, you've covered it all. And I thank you for that. I thank you for that inspiration, for that challenge. And thank you so much for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Oh my gosh, Carol, thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.
Hi, this is Carol Graham with Praying for Miracles with Carol. I want to extend a special invitation to all of you or any of you who have not yet joined us for the Pray the Answer webinar. We meet by Zoom every other Thursday. And the subjects that we discuss, I know will be of interest to you. The comments that we are receiving are absolutely mind-blowing for me personally, how lives are being changed as a result of having the opportunity to discuss things that maybe there's no other platform out there that are discussing them. And because you have an opportunity at that point to ask your questions, we can interact from any place in the world. And they are usually an hour long, but if we have more questions and we have time, there's no time limit, and we will extend it to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask the questions regarding the subject that we're talking about. And I look forward to seeing you. I thank you for your support. And just to give you a little rundown of some of the subjects that we have covered or are going to cover would be the subject of praise. This is huge, and understanding how praise affects us in every area of our spiritual walk. Things like fear, things like conviction of the Holy Spirit. What is the difference between faith and hope? How often do I need to confess my sins? What is a doer of the word? What does that mean? And one subject that we probably will cover in different areas is New Age and how it is creeping into the church. How do we recognize it? What do we do about it? Another subject is the law versus grace. Another area where a lot of Christians do not understand how to walk in grace and not be walking in condemnation and guilt under the law. So these are just a few of the subjects. Also, you have an opportunity to not only ask your questions about what we're discussing, but share if there are other things that you would like to talk about in the future. So I look forward to seeing you. Just go to prayingmiracles.com. This is a free webinar. There is no charge for you. And also, if you share it with your friends, that would be great, and I appreciate that as well. So we'll see you at prayingmiracles.com. All you have to do is register, and you will be part of our group. Thank you.
Feeling stuck in your prayer life? You're not alone. Join Pray the Answer webinar led by prayer coach Carol Graham. Each session will help you shift from fear to faith and from worry to worship. Learn how to pray God's word and receive real answers. Visit prayingmiracles.com to register today.